espionage ring that is now being investigated. To begin with, we tell you who is Mahesh Langa. Well, Langa is a Gujarat correspondent of a national daily who is accused of using his position to engage in extortion, illicit businesses, and allegedly has earned a large amount of money through this. And here's a look now at the various cases against him. So far, there are about 3 cases and 3 FIRs that have been filed against Langa. The first case was lodged on the 7th of October by the Ahmedabad crime branch based on the complaint received by the Central GST. Now, this was followed by a second FIR registered in Gandhinagar against him on the 23rd of October. Following the alleged recovery of some documents of the Gujarat Maritime Board from him, the police say that this online FIR was not accessible to the public as it has been put under the sensitive category. Langa has now been named in a third FIR related to an alleged fraud of 28 lakh rupees. Now, this latest FIR against Langa, registered by the Ahmedabad police, is based on a complaint filed by Pranav Shah. He's the director of a company named Khushi Enterprises. The complainant has claimed that he had transferred 23 lakh rupees to Langa for some advertisement work and also paid 5 lakh for a lavish party which Langa had thrown. And Langa never repaid him. Let's begin with listening in to what the police commissioner of Ahmedabad, G.S. Malik, has shared about the scam so far.
हम एक हिंदू के जर्नलिस्ट महेश लांगा से रिलेटेड करने जा रहे हैं। आज उसके खिलाफ हम एक और एफआईआर दाखिल करने जा रहे हैं। लगभग 28 लाख के करीब चीटिंग की एक एफआईआर, एक कंप्लेनेंट आया है। और उस एफआईआर की डिटेल से पहले मैं बताना चाहूँगा कि यहाँ हमने जो अभी तक इन्वेस्टिगेशन की है वो पुलिस बहुत ही प्रोफेशनली कर रही है, कोई उसमें डाउट नहीं है। इसकी डिटेल में बताना चाहूँगा। सबसे पहले तो इसमें जो जीएसटी डिपार्टमेंट की तरफ से एक एफआईआर दाखिल करी गई थी 7 अक्टूबर को। उसके बाद महेश लांगा और कुछ एसोसिएट्स को अरेस्ट किया गया, घर पे उसके सर्च की गई। उसके घर पे करीब 20 लाख कैश मिले, कुछ डॉक्यूमेंट्स, इंक्रिमिनेटिंग डॉक्यूमेंट्स मिले। जो सर्च कंडक्ट की गई थी वो 19 लोकेशंस में की गई थी पुलिस के द्वारा, भावनगर, सूरत, जूनागढ़, राजकोट, अहमदाबाद। और एफआईआर में ही शेल कंपनियां, लगभग 222 कंपनियों का जिक्र है। शेल कंपनियों का जो डिटेल है वो टेक्निकल जो एनालिसिस है कि एक ही मोबाइल पे काफी कंपनियां रजिस्टर्ड हैं, एक ही पैन नंबर पे काफी कंपनियां रजिस्टर्ड हैं, एक ही ईमेल आईडी है। तो इस टाइप से उन्होंने टेक्निकल एनालिसिस से जीएसटी डिपार्टमेंट ने उसमें बताया है। तो इसमें जो एक शेल कंपनी थी ध्रुवी एंटरप्राइज, और उसकी 12 कंपनियों का स्पेसिफिक मेंशन इस एफआईआर में किया गया है। उसके बाद हमने महेश लांगा की 10 दिन की रिमांड ली, उसको डीप इंटरोगेशन किया। मैंने भी पर्सनली महेश लांगा का इंटरोगेशन किया है। और पुलिस ने अभी तक जो इन्वेस्टिगेशन की है बिल्कुल प्रोफेशनली की है। आपको कुछ डिटेल में इसके बारे में बताना चाहूँगा कि जो शेल कंपनी थी ध्रुवी एंटरप्राइज, जिसका कि मेन उसका जो महेश लांगा की वाइफ के नाम पे कंपनी थी डीए एंटरप्राइज। वो महेश लांगा की वाइफ कविता लांगा और उसका एक कजन महेश लांगा जो कि एक सिक्योरिटी गार्ड है, उसके नाम पे थी। उसके महेश लांगा जो उसका कजन है, उसने मजिस्ट्रेट के सामने भी अपना स्टेटमेंट दे दिया है कि ये जो कंपनी थी ये महेश लांगा की थी और उसकी वाइफ हाउस वाइफ है। उसने भी ये बताया है कि मुझे कुछ पता नहीं है, तो यही महेश लांगा ही उसको ऑपरेट कर रहा था।
And Shrimi Chaudhary, our Delhi Bureau Chief, is now joining us. Hi, Shrimi. Now, Shrimi, this investigation seems to be widening now, and today his bail was also rejected. So give us more details as to what's happened.
So far, 3 cases have been registered against Mahesh Langa, Dhurvi Enterprises and many more in this particular matter. So it all stemmed from GST fraud case, which was first raised by GST Central Authority in collaboration with Gujarat State. And what they found is that Dhurvi Enterprises, which has obtained fake registration, has, tried to issue a lot of bogus bogus invoices to claim input tax credit through 12 shell firms. Now, out of that 12 shell firm, there is one, this DA Enterprises, which is the center of the investigation, because it is controlled by Mahesh Langa, Gujarat-based journalist. So what police is looking into at this case is that, how they kind of get into the transaction of 44 crore with this Dhurvi Enterprises to claim this input tax credit. Now, another case is with regards to the possession of confidential document, and police is looking into how this document have been misused, whether it has been misused or not for personal gain. And third is, of course, duping of businessmen of about 29 lakh rupees, as the Malik also pointed that out in his statement. So now what ED is looking at, because the ED also booked the case after the police complaints and the police FIR, and they are looking into and booked him under PMLA, Prevention of Money Laundering Act. So they are looking into largely the Hawala transaction, whether there is an illegal way of transferring of money without any physical movement. They are also looking at, whether there is any sort of, criminal activities and proceeds of crime which was generated out of criminal activities. So ED is looking into that, and they have conducted search as well. Income tax department role will also come into play, because there is a 44 crore of transaction, and unexplained expenses is also recovered from DA Enterprises, the premises which was searched by police also and the enforcement directorate also. So largely, if you see, there are a couple of things which police is highlighting, suspecting, underlining, saying that it's a larger conspiracy. It's not just limited to GST fraud. It's beyond that. It's a blackmailing, extortion, illegal running of businesses for the personal benefit. They have in fact had a phone chats are also there, which they are examining at this point of time, which is indicating towards monetary gains and monetary discussion over phone, is what the police is saying. So overall, we are looking at that this has become a multi-agency probe, and they are examining and investigating from all the angles and not just the GST fraud.
What we're looking at, perhaps what began as a GST fraud is now looking at just like it was the tip of the iceberg. So it does appear to be a bigger case now. And to discuss this particular case, we're now joined by Abhijit Iyer-Mitra. He's a senior fellow of the IPCS. And we're also joined by Mr. Abhishek Rastogi. He's a lawyer and founder of the Rastogi Chambers. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us. To you first, Abhijit. Now, you've heard the conversation that Shrimi and I had. And before that, of course, we also heard GS Malik. Now, this is a case that has shocked many people. Now, do you think it is just one journalist here, or is there a larger nexus that could perhaps be at play? Is this a case, of what many are calling as corporate espionage?
So this is actually a much bigger case, Nupur, because what my sources in Gujarat police are telling me is there are lots of babus also in trouble in this, because it was a nexus of, industry, Mahesh Langa and a number of babus. The problem was, on one side, any company that wanted to defame another company would leak documents which would then be used to attack companies. And then, using that as a pattern, money would be demanded in order to, not publish stories. The second of these charges, which relates to documents related to the Gujarat, to the GMB, are particularly instructive, because Langa got them in the first week of August, and no story was filed till his arrest on the 8th of October. Now, what's curious is it was just one tranche of documents. You could say he was waiting for confirmation of other documents. No. What Gujarat police are telling me is also that, these same documents were then circulated on WhatsApp to rival businesses. They were circulated to certain political parties, and there were certain demands made as well. The problem here, of course, was why this gentleman got caught is that he was extremely indiscreet. If you're doing things, you should know that WhatsApp is certainly not the place to be transacting any business of any sort. But he was. And this has led to the main reason that GMB case has been classified and been made secret is because of the number of names that have come tumbling out of the closet. You're going to see this expand very, very significantly. Like your colleague just quite rightly said, it's the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more to come right now.
All right. Now, you did bring about the fact that he came in possession of these documents at a certain point, and thereafter he did not use them for professional purposes. Now, the organization that he worked with has come out in defense, saying that they support a journalist's right to obtain and process confidential or sensitive documents in the line of his or her work. How do you see that comment that has come in?
That is an absolute correct line to take. All press organizations and publications must be protected. There are whistleblower protections that must be afforded. The issue here is you have to understand where the Hindu is coming from. If you remember in 1984, 85, 86, when the Bofors scandal was around, their current editor, Mr. N. Ram, had some very sensitive documents. The government tried to prosecute him for it, which was a complete overreach of the law. Again, the same gentleman published, that is to say, Mr. N. Ram, published some Rafale documents, and there were lots of threatening noises that he should be arrested for it, which is completely wrong, which is why action ultimately could not be taken, because you cannot take the journalist to task over it. The official who leaked the documents, on the other hand, can be charged under the Official Secrets Act. Now, the issue that is here with Mahesh Langa is different. Unfortunately, there is only the possession charge. The charge here really should be a monetization of documents, not passing those documents up the chain of command at his publication, not discussing it with his editor, not producing any work product. There was no work product that came from those documents. Instead, we know that those documents were never circulated to his bosses. They were circulated to corporate interests. There was fiduciary gain sought in return for their circulation, and they were circulated to political parties.
All right. Let's also bring in Mr. Rastogi right now. Mr. Rastogi, in this particular case, it began with a GST fraud. And now the ED has stepped in to look at Hawala transactions. The IT department is also looking at income tax evasion. Explain to us how all of this ties in, for people who are watching.
So, Nupur and Shrimi, I think, first of all, journalism maintains democracy. It is the force for progressive change, social change. So I think it is a little disheartening today that, this has happened, and from a journalist, so as to say. Now, coming on to your question, as with respect to the investigation being started from the GST, yes, there is a clear visible case that there were shell companies, and hence the case was booked under GST for this circular trading sort of things, which is happening all throughout the country, and for which there have been a lot of arrests because, the inherent goods or services are not there, but these are paper transactions. So I think it started from there. But to be very frank, it would not end there, because there will be income tax angle to it. There will be money laundering aspect to it. And there will be certainly serious criminal charges, which will also come on to surface because of the various acts which are, I would not say incidental and ancillary, but which would be more from the criminal perspective, which could be extortion of money and misuse of information. So I think today the more important question, which is before everyone, is that this sensitive information, which a journalist has, in performing his or her own duties, can that be misused? And once that happens, I think the society would not look that at a very positive way, because, this is journalism is a matter of trust. And if that happens from someone like a journalist, who's with a big corporate group, then I think that's not a good sign. And hence, it is very important that the detailing and the investigation must progress in a very pragmatic way, in a very fair and transparent way, so that the truth comes out. And what I understand is that there are extortion cases, misuse of information. Some information has been obtained in the role as a journalist, but has been misused or not used for that factor. And, from that perspective, and there has been a change of money which has happened for all of this. So I think this is something very serious. This could be a blot on the entire journalism sector. So I think from that perspective, it becomes very important, not only for the criminal charges which will be framed, but also for all of these taxes and money laundering aspects which come into play.
So, Mr. Rastogi, I wanted to ask, as you rightly explained, that it all started with the GST, and now income tax and other agencies are also joining the probe. But when the matter goes to court, it always faces a lot of pendency. Because of the lack of evidences. Here we are also talking about, sharing information, confidential information with the corporate entities. But do police or any agency for that matter has evidence in hand to sort of stand in court of law, and how these cases will take a final conclusion, because it always lacks some of the other evidences to sort of prove?
Shribi, I think very fair question, but I think there will be several aspects to it. For instance, there will be GST angle to it, there will be money laundering aspect to it, and there will be certain other criminal charges of extortion to it. So, for instance, now today, what I understand, the bail has been rejected. He will be in judicial custody. There will be more interrogation which will happen. And I think the authorities will have a bigger role to play here, because they will be in the process of now collating information, evidence, and filing a charge sheet within the stipulated time of 60 or 90 days, depending on what the charges are being framed. So as to say, I think there are several severe charges which have been imposed. And I think the magistrate court would have taken into consideration these charges, and that's why the bail has been rejected. So for instance, it could be not easy for the charges on money laundering to be proved immediately, but on these shell companies and the circular trading transactions, the courts could, get a flavor of what has been happening. And when that couples with things like extortion, and there is a third FIR which has been filed for cheating, extortion, and some 28 lakhs rupees. I think this will be clearly visible in terms of not only the evidence which would have been gathered so far, but also the witnesses, also the FIRs which have been launched. Multiple FIRs have been launched. So I think from that perspective, I think as far as our judicial system is concerned, the judicial system will take into consideration on a holistic basis that what is happening, what has been the role of this person. When there are these shell companies, he may have put on the paper his wife or some other relative, but actually he is the kingpin. So I think from that perspective, all of this will have to be considered by the courts so as to ensure that the bail is not granted and the authorities are given fair chance to investigate, so that witnesses are not influenced, the evidence is not tampered, and whatever is relevant for the charge sheet to be filed is before the authorities.
All right. Now, do stay with us. Now, adding to whatever the Ahmedabad police has said, the commissioner also commented on Mahesh Langa's income tax returns pattern, reflecting the kind of lifestyle that he and his family lived. Let's listen into that, and then I'll come back to you.
कि जो इनकम टैक्स का जो रिटर्न हमने लास्ट 2022-23 का जो चेक किया, उसमें उसकी खुद की इनकम केवल 9.48 लाख बताई है और उसकी वाइफ की इनकम 6.04 लाख, मतलब लगभग 15.5 लाख के करीब उसकी एक साल की इनकम है और 20 लाख तो कैश घर से मिला है। और उसका जो लाइफस्टाइल देखो, 5 स्टार होटलों में रुकना, महंगी महंगी गिफ्ट्स का एक्सचेंज, विजिटेड फॉरेन कंट्रीज ऑल्सो, अबू धाबी, दुबई, हांगकांग वगैरह भी बाहर ट्रैवल किया गया है।
All right, Abhijit, does this opulent lifestyle that the police seems to be describing sound a bit of a discordant note here?
Really, if you add it with the pattern of behavior, being extremely unguarded in WhatsApp messages, he spent 98 days out of 365 for the fiscal year 2022-23 in presidential suites and the top suites at 5-star hotels. His wife actually rocked up to a ceremony hosted by Tanishq, where she was given an award for being the 20 biggest buyers of the year. And, in Ahmedabad, 5-carat diamonds are nothing really. Things like this, adding up, it is the sheer sense of impunity. In fact, what the Gujarat police have been telling me is that, initially they didn't want to arrest him. The interrogation, however, went south because, excuse me, what ended up happening was he started threatening the police. He started name dropping. And a lot of his sense of entitlement came from the fact, that he had this complete sense of impunity, that he knew people in high places who would protect him. So this is a case of basically being, I'm sorry, Nupur, I've just got a bad throat, of extreme carelessness, combined with the fact that, today, you can't get away with doing the kind of frauds you could at one point of time. The digital databases are so tight, and digital transactions, excuse me, are so tight. There is cross-referencing that happens. There are about 24 to 36 different databases that are cross-referenced, where you can't do this kind of GST fraud. You can't do these transactions and not get flagged. As a rule, the top 1 to 2 percentile always get sent tax notices every year. If as in the top 1 to 2 percentile of taxpayers in this country. In this case, he didn't make that cut. Remember, his total household income for the year was around 15 lakhs. His 9 lakhs, his wife's 6 lakhs. At 15 lakhs, excuse me, for you to be, going and leading this kind of a lifestyle, rocking up to award ceremonies, being a jeweler's best client, taking private jets, apparently, in certain cases. I mean, I really don't know what the gentleman was thinking. I don't know what anybody was thinking in this case, really.
Yeah, so, quite a lavish lifestyle, and I heard police also stating about that he was maintaining such a, extravagant lifestyle, which is hard to believe for journalists because we also come from that background. But I wanted to check and ask both of you that, and Mr. Rastogi also, Mr. Iyer also, that, the way the government made this entire GST system robust, it's somewhere try to get each and every information, 360-degree profiling of each and every individual. Now, this matter started, if you see the tax, the numbers, the income numbers which you just quoted, and in fact it's in public domain also about 2021, is that 15 lakhs overall income. Now, I want to understand what took so much of time for agencies to sort of get that information and get to know that where is the loophole, how he's getting multifold income there. What took so much of time for agencies to sort of establish when there is a automatic exchange of information within the government agencies, the GST, income tax, even the data goes to stock exchanges. So all are connected. Agencies are getting all sort of information. So what took them so long?
So the first thing the police told me was that there was... Sorry.
So what happens is we must acknowledge that today the government has got a lot of artificial intelligence. The government has got a lot of data. The GST network also throws in a lot of data. But it would not happen that all of this data comes into investigation mode right in the very next financial year, because the systems are such that there are certain deadlines of filing annual returns, of filing monthly returns, of the credits which goes and is passed on. Because if this is a case of shell companies, he would have passed on the credit, would have got money back in some form of cash, and there would have been default at the end of either the vendor or the customer. So that would have happened. The GST authorities, the moment they get the triggered information from the system that there are certain lapses, they do the backward calculation of the chain. They go on to the supply chain and see that where there appears to be a problem. Then they would have gone on to the aspect of investigation of several companies being GST registered on the same PAN number or at the same address. Now, identification of that is not sometimes very easy because it could be a case where these are genuine companies but are at the same address, possibly the same building. So sometimes it takes time to gather this information, process that data, and then come to a conclusion. Because if there is something which is something very serious, the government and the investigation authorities today generally take into cognizance all of these factors, because the law which says is that they must have a reason to believe that why this investigation or seizure, etc., must happen. So that takes, Shrimi, a little more time. Then what the tax authorities, for instance, GST in this case, would have done, would have rechecked that information from at least two authorities. One, the income tax authorities, and second, from the banking channels. Only when these transactions are checked, rechecked, and they have an apprehension that there is a reasonable doubt that it is leading to some tax evasion, the investigation proceeds. So I think that process takes some time, coupled by the fact that even the taxpayer has the right to revise the return. The taxpayer has the right to add some additional changes.
Right.
And for a fact that there have been a lot of changes in terms of timelines, the extensions which may have happened.
Okay.
So I think that all aggregates to that some time lag which happens.
So what you're saying essentially, Abhishek, is that there is a very robust sort of a mechanism that is in place, and all these authorities are connected to one another. I'm afraid we are completely out of time, but thank you, both of you, very much, as well as Shrimi, for joining us on The Big Story this evening.
Thanks.
Well, with that, it is a wrap on The Big Story on NDTV Profit. Thank you very much for joining in, but do stay tuned to more.
Event amid row with India. welcome to the India Global News. I'm your host Rika Roy. Over the next half hour, we'll take you through Canada to Bangladesh. There are many news that is happening across the globe. So here are the headlines that we take a look at this hour. Canada opposition leader cancels Diwali event amid row with India. Indo-Canadian community slams Poilievre, calling it an insensitive act. It's Mohammad Yunus versus the Awami League. He calls Hasina's party fascist, accuses them of fascism. Yunus says no place for Hasina's fascist party in Bangladesh. US condemns strike in northern Gaza, calls it appalling. Israeli strike on residential buildings kill at least 93 people. At least 62 people are killed in flash floods in Spain's Valencia region. Heavy storms trigger floods across Spain. A dozen centuries-old statues are unearthed in Cambodia. Statues depicting so-called door guardians are found. Artifacts are believed to belong from 11th century royal palace. There is more friction in the already strained New Delhi-Ottawa relations this time around. Canadian opposition leader Pierre Poilievre finds himself in hot water after cancelling the annual Parliament-held Diwali event, a tradition that goes back 23 years. The move has sparked a massive backlash and accusations of discrimination, racism, and even betrayal. And the event's organizer, the Overseas Friends of India Canada, has penned a scathing letter to Poilievre. This report tells you more. To discuss, we will also have guests, but let's first have a look at the report.
Canadian opposition leader Pierre Poilievre's surprise decision to pull the plug on the 24th edition of Diwali celebrations at Parliament Hill has been met with immediate criticism from Overseas Friends of India Canada. The event is more than just a celebration. It is a rallying point for Canadians of Indian descent and an exhibition of multicultural spirit that Ottawa takes pride in. The organizers, who were not given any explanation whatsoever, argue that this move not only dims the festive spirit but also sends a troubling message to the South Asian community. Critics are labeling the cancellation a slap in the face, arguing it undermines the importance of cultural inclusivity. The event's organizer has slammed Poilievre, coupled with demanding an apology. The scathing letter, written by OFIC's President Shiv Bhaskar, underlines that the cancellation has left the diaspora feeling betrayed and unjustly singled out. Bhaskar's letter highlights that the Indian community is being made to feel like outsiders and not fellow Canadians. It also stresses on rising racism and discrimination thriving in Canada. The letter, which represents the will of 850,000 members of the Indo-Canadian community, goes on to finally demand an apology for the quote-unquote insensitive and discriminatory acts. As the backlash grows, it remains to be seen how this incident will affect the opposition leader's standing within the community and the broader political landscape. For now, the leader faces an uphill battle to mend fences and restore trust. The Diwali event may be cancelled, but the conversation around inclusivity and respect is just heating up. Arjun Samar Mahindran, NDTV World.
Now, the Overseas Friends of India Canada has penned a scathing letter to Poilievre. We have with us Shiv Bhaskar, the president of Overseas Friends of India Canada, and Vivek Mishra, Deputy Director of Strategic Studies Program of Visiting Fellow ORF, that is Observers Research Foundation America. Let me go over to Shiv Bhaskar, who has written this letter. Thank you very much for joining us on this show. What message does Poilievra's surprise cancellation really send to minority communities in Canada?
Yeah, Rika, thank you for having me. I mean, basically, I can give you a bit of background.